share the profits with the people who gave us the flower and gave us the knowledge that that flower had healing characteristics. And this is not because of the lack of benefit sharing, this is because of logging, but it would be helpful if the natural resources of Africa could be recognized. So what we have then is biopiracy through theft. This is an organization in the United States where we're trying to raise the issue. One of the issues for Iraq, for the war in Iraq, is that the US government in 2004, that's what's being discussed on the right there, actually said that Iraqi seeds need to be patented. So Iraq is the Tigris-Euphrates rivers. Their agriculture goes back to the origins of agriculture, and one of the official military policies of the US is to patent Iraqi seed. So we are raising the issue, and we are saying that seed belongs to everybody, and that it needs to be shared, and it needs to also have some benefit sharing back. A final example is biopiracy through destruction, the fire of the pirates. I have this picture simply showing you pollen to remind you how plants will help each other. They will actually interbreed. If you genetically modify sorghum, corn, soya, canola, the genetically modified pollen can genetically pollute other fields. This is what's happening in the United States. The US government has tried to set up a refuge. In other words, okay, if you've got a genetically modified field of soya, you have to have 100 yards of refuge between the two to keep the pollen from pollinating from the genetically modified to the original strain. This sounded like a good idea until they found out, and this is just one example, that the pollen of bent grass, which is used, it's genetically modified, used in golf courses, very good grass for golf courses. The pollen of bent grass travels 15 kilometers. Can't have a refuge for bent grass. So the two things that are new for biopiracy, I gave you examples from history in terms of the Aztec, the buffalo. The two new aspects of biopiracy for the 21st century are the genetically modified destruction of plants. Because if you genetically pollute an indigenous variety of the rosy periwinkle, or of sorghum, or various kinds of indigenous corn of the Hopi, you cannot get it back. Okay? It's released into nature, you cannot get it back. So the 21st century destruction is genetically modified. The second addition that you've heard me mention several times for the 21st century is the patenting. It's okay to take plants. It's the history of agriculture. What is new is the privatization of a living organism. And we now have corporations who own whole species of plants. It is legal according to American law. It is not yet legal according to international law. But when the United States does a trade agreement with another country, the most recent example is Peru, we demand that the US approach to patenting be enforced, or there's no trade agreement with the United States. So the two new things, the genetically modified and the patenting, are for the 21st century, the biopiracy. Why? Why are we having the patenting? Because it's profitable. Because if you can get, let's take the Thule cattle, if you can get that rich genetic diverse base of cattle from Africa to crossbreed with the North American cattle, you've got an incredible raw material input, and you've hardly paid anything for it. So it's a free raw material, a free input. And one of the ways I talk about it for the African continent is for 300 years they suffered the loss of their most able-bodied men and women through slavery. For 200 years and counting, they have lost the minerals that is the basis of the conflict in the eastern Congo It has nothing to do with black on black violence. It's about minerals. So we're taking the minerals too cheaply. Every single one of our cell phones has coltan in it. We cannot have a cell phone without coltan. My laptop has coltan in it. It comes from the eastern Congo. We get it almost virtually free. So for 200 years, there's been the theft of minerals. And what I suggest is the 21st century for Africa is going to be the theft of the bioresources through patenting, not just the taking of them, but the patenting of them. Let us go on to how do we turn this around? What's happening here? One of the first things we have to do as North Americans is change our way of thinking. And then I'm going to give you some examples, the positive examples from the African continent that we can listen to as lessons to us. Waving fields of grain. We all sing to it, we all honor it. It is a golden wealth, a golden treasure. We now as North Americans need to look at this picture and see lack of development, involution, loss, poverty, not wealth, not richness. And I am asking a lot, but we've turned other things around. We used to think smoking was great, and now you can't even get within, reaches of a building. We've seen the Berlin Wall fall, a new way of thinking. We've seen the fall of apartheid in southern Africa. This new way of thinking is as important and probably more complex. Because this kind of agriculture, you can see, is one variety of wheat, and only wheat. We call it monoculture within monoculture. Any wheat virus that shows up is going to wipe out hundreds of thousands of acres of wheat across Montana, the Dakotas. We need genetic diversity to be food secure. The American approach to agriculture is monoculture within monoculture. We're down to, let me exaggerate a little bit, basically 2 varieties of wheat in the United States of America. Africans have their food base of about 2,000 different plants. In the United States, 75% of our food comes from 12 plants. We have lost our biodiversity. We have lost the treasure that nature has given us to feed us. Another problem with this picture, heavy chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers. For 1 calorie of food, depending on the food and the farming conditions, it takes 10 to 15 calories of fossil fuels to produce the food. This is unsustainable agriculture. Another problem, destruction of topsoil across the Great Plains. After the buffalo were gone, we planted and we fed people, and we need to applaud that, but we have moved from 20 inches of topsoil down to 6 in about 70 years. Not sustainable, and we certainly shouldn't ask the African continent to do the same thing. When the Aztecs were growing amaranth, they grew amaranth for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years because they had a sustainable way of production. These are just some of the problems of this picture, and we have to reverse our way of thinking. This is a picture of the agriculture of the 21st century. Intercropping, you can see the sunflowers, the tall plants are millets, and then the red is another amaranth. So you have to intercrop. We know how to do this. A lot of you are doing it in your gardens. You're also doing organic farming. You're reducing the amount of chemicals and pesticides. The reason we use so much fertilizer in the United States, by the way, has to do with World War II. There was a lot of nitrogen left over, so we put it into fertilizer. Okay, it's all documented. So we have to move from this picture as the way to do agriculture to this picture. And this is the gift of the African continent. They know how to do this kind of agriculture. The Hopi do, if you've been up in Hopi. So again, indigenous peoples know how to do this kind of agriculture. And then I'm already hearing you, oh, but yield. Won't everybody starve? Okay. That has been what we've been told for 60, 70 years.